Look, I got tired of waiting for Sony to bring the colored controllers to America, so I decided to paint my Dualshock 4. So in this video, I'm going to show you my process for painting the Dualshock 4. The textured feel of the back piece is important in my opinion, so I'm only painting the front panel. Plus, I'm really happy with the two-tone color scheme of the finished product. This means you're losing the share and options text on the face of the controller, FYI, if you choose to do this. I've already made a video that entails disassembly, so check that out if need be, link in the dump. After you've disassembled your controller and have the piece you're painting, you've got to prepare your surface. First, you're going to want to sand every surface that you're going to paint. Every surface that will be visible once the controller is reassembled. Sanding helps the paint adhere to the surface. In particular, the glossy finish around the D-pad and the face buttons are going to have to go. I recommend something like 400 to 500 grit sandpaper. Try to get into the contours as best you can, like between the thumbstick assembly and the hand grip. You don't need to go crazy, just make all the surfaces appear dull. Then comes the cleaning and drying of the surface. You're cleaning off the dust you created while sanding and any other fibers and skin oils that might be on its surface at this point. Wash it thoroughly with water and a bit of mild soap, then rinse it thoroughly. From this point until you're completely done painting, your best bet for handling the controller is to use some powder-free disposable gloves like the nitrile gloves you can find at a car parts store. The gloves help prevent leaving any fibers or skin oils on the surface. And to the same end, you should completely dry off the controller with a lint-free cloth. Lint is the enemy. Try to avoid leaving lint on the surface that is to be painted from this point until you're done. When you're finished, look at the controller closely to make sure that there is no lint or water hidden in any cracks. Now, let's talk about paint. I've only ever worked with canned spray paint, so that's what I'm going to talk about. For me, there are two ways to go. You can go with Duplicolor vinyl and fabric paint, or you can go with Krylon Fusion. The advantage of the vinyl and fabric paint, which you can find at most car parts stores, is that it has adequate adhesion promoter built into it. But vinyl and fabric paint has a very limited selection of colors. So I'm doing this tutorial with Krylon Fusion. Whatever you use, you'll want to pay attention to the can's directions for drying times and so forth. Most importantly, never mix acrylic lacquer with acrylic enamel. If your paint is lacquer and your clear coat is enamel, then your paint will probably just crinkle up and you'll have to do it again, only the right way next time. Now, Krylon Fusion is popular because it's marketed for use on plastics. The reason it's marketed for plastics is that it has adhesion promoter built into it, just like the vinyl and fabric paint. However, because you're going to be gripping and manipulating your paint surface for hours on end, Krylon Fusion's built-in adhesion promoter isn't going to be sufficient, in my opinion. The paint alone will probably peel off at some point for most people. That's why I highly recommend applying Duplicolor adhesion promoter first. Generally speaking, I'd recommend against mixing brands or even mixing product lines, but this combo works very well in my experience and from what I've read. And finally, I highly recommend using a clear coat over Krylon Fusion paint because Fusion in particular is prone to peeling without it. So what you should use is the Krylon Fusion clear coat, the same branding. These three products together are very durable if you use them correctly. They're all available at many car parts stores and big box stores like Walmart. I think they're also available at Amazon too, so if there's a color you're looking for, you can maybe find it there. You need to paint in a well-ventilated area, so I'm going to paint outside. I made this little painting room out of a large cardboard box to avoid floating dust, bugs, and plant debris getting on the controller while I'm painting. If something lands on your wet paint, you could try to pluck it off with a needle if you have a steady hand. But if you're like me, the chances of you messing up the paint job are high. As such, I just try to avoid getting such particles on it in the first place and paint over it if it isn't too terribly egregious. So with the adhesion promoter, you'll want to lay down a light coat or two and then finally a slightly heavier, wetter coat. Wait about 3 minutes between coats and then start painting within 5 to 10 minutes of your final coat of adhesion promoter. Wait at least 3 minutes, but do not wait longer than 10 minutes before applying your first coat of paint for best results. After you start painting, you never need adhesion promoter again for this project. Even if you wanted to paint over it with a new color at some point down the road, you will not need adhesion promoter again. Now, for your Krylon Fusion, you're going to do several light coats of paint. Light coats, or your paint will run and you'll have to sand and start over. Wait 15 minutes between coats. I'd recommend at least 4 light coats. I did 6 coats. With each coat, you're going to want to cover as thoroughly as possible by hitting it from different angles and making sure that the crevices are covered. And with your final couple of coats, you could lay the paint on a little bit thicker, but don't go crazy. After your last coat of paint, wait 15 minutes and then apply your first coat of Krylon Fusion Clear. You want to do 4 to 6 coats, waiting a minute or 2 between coats. As before, start light, but you can get a bit heavier with subsequent coats. Just again, don't go crazy. And here's the finished product, and this is after a few weeks of use that I'm filming. A couple of important notes though. After your last clear coat, wait 20 minutes and then you can touch it. You can feel it and move it around, but do not handle it like you would if you were using it. For best results, I'd very, very strongly recommend that you do not really handle it heavily at all for a full 5 days to a week. That means you really should just set it aside without even reassembling the controller for that period of time. I'll explain why in just a second. Now, second note, I had enough overspray inside the well of the thumbstick that when I reassembled it, my thumbsticks were sticking in place because of the friction. Maybe that's because I have the Xbox One sticks, I don't know. So you have 2 options to deal with this sort of problem. You can mask off the inside of the thumbstick wells with masking tape before painting, then remove them afterwards, or you can sand it after the fact. My recommendation is that you sand afterward because masking and subsequently removing the masks looks a little difficult to me in that space. Sanding, on the other hand, was a breeze, if a little time consuming to do correctly. I sanded with 500 grit, but you'd probably be better off with 200 to 300 grit. Just don't sand the outwardly visible edges, the paint job. My only problem is that I didn't wait a week before sanding, and I ended up holding the painted controller so tightly that I caused a bit of crinkling on my otherwise good-looking paint job. This is most noticeable in the video here in the space between the touchpad and the speaker grate. I didn't mess it up too badly, but it could have been avoided if I had waited like I knew I should have. So again, all this footage is from weeks after use. It's been holding up very well. No problems, and I expect it to last for a long time. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos if you like, or don't, whatever. Goodbye.